Hello and welcome back to Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers. I'm Elizabeth Nelson here as always with Kay Johnson. And Kay, what have you been reading?
Well, I have been on a non-fiction kick for a touch. Not too much, but a touch. So I started with a book called The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11. And it's by a guy named Garrett Graff. And he's a reporter with either the New York Times or Washington Post or Wall Street Journal, something like that. And anyway, this book is really interesting because it's just like paragraphs. And it looks at 9/11 from virtually every angle. It starts with air traffic controllers. And the head guy, it was his first day on the job. So that talk about baptism by fire.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then, it's got police, it's got firemen, it's got the Pentagon, it's got just regular people on the street, and it's interesting because they're short, and it goes fast, but it's almost a 500-page book. And so the one thing I found that I did not know, I didn't even know it was possible not to know something about 9/11. But on 9/11, they created they got ships together, boats, yachts, to haul people off the end of the island across to New Jersey. And it was the largest boat lift since Dunkirk.
Wow.
Bigger than Dunkirk, actually. And when they finished ferrying people across, then they started to go the reverse and bring supplies and food and water and everything. So that was interesting. That, I would say, was the only thing that was truly new. The other thing that was interesting was there was one ticket agent who held a flight for two of the hijackers. They were coming. And so throughout the book, he's getting ostracized by people, because of, and so that was interesting too, because you don't think about that he was just doing his job, and on a bad day to be doing your job. And so Graff wrote that book, and he just released the last couple of weeks a book called Watergate A New History. And so he's looking at Watergate, which happened in the 70s, so it's like 50 years ago. And so it gives you a nice perspective. And I'm kind of into Watergate only because at the time when they were doing the hearings, my sister Jill was ill, and so she was restricted to bed for weeks, and she watched it on the
that explains a lot about why she likes to look into so much political intrigue now.
So
it's a whole other door that's been opened for me now.
So she watched it. She actually had trench mouth, so she so anyway, so I want to read Watergate A New History next. That's my next one. So what have you been reading?
Well, following the nonfiction, I started out with reading Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier. It's got a much longer title. So Dan Harris is I believe he was on whatever channel Good Morning America is on. But he is a reporter, and he's probably most famous for being the reporter who had anxiety attacks on air while he was presenting.
Now I know who it is.
Yes. So his book talks about his up-and-coming career. He worked for Peter Jennings, and then through having these panic attacks. I don't want to call them breakdowns because a panic attack isn't a breakdown. It's a whole spectrum, but we're not going to get into mental
health
figuring that all out. No. He found that what worked best for him was meditation, not medicine and all this other stuff. And so he's talking about his career and then how other famous people like him were able to use that. Now, I personally can't sit still for longer than 5 minutes if I'm not reading a book. So it's probably not for me, especially if you have small children. But it was interesting. It's interesting to hear people talk about what can help them And then I read one other one I read that was also nonfiction was Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, and it's a therapist and her therapist.
Oh, that's interesting.
So Lori Gottlieb, and so she's engaged, and one night she and her husband her fiance are at home, and he tells her that she has a son that's at home. He's like 8, and this gentleman's kids are all grown up, and he says that he still wants to marry her, but that he doesn't want another family. Like, he doesn't want kids around. Which she's like, well, that's great, but I have an 8-year-old kid, and I come with the kid, and you know I come with the kid. And he's like, yeah, well, I love you, but I just don't want
the kid.
Ooh. And so they break up, and so she is a therapist and is meeting and talking about all of her people. Well, because she can't figure out what's going on, she has to go and see a therapist. And so it sort of talks about her interaction with some of her patients, her and her therapist, and the history kind of, I guess, psychotherapy. So that was kind of interesting. I had to kind of read it in spurts because you kind of start psychoanalyzing yourself, like, well, if this therapist needs a therapist, then why maybe I need a therapist? So it was kind of it's interesting to read the history about that and the different ways, and the different thoughts and stuff like that. But I'd seen it kind of popping up kind of all over the place in the last maybe 2-3 years. So I figured I should check it out. So it's available at the library both as a book and an audiobook.
Oh,
but I don't know who reads.
Did you read it or do the audiobook?
I read it.
Okay.
And Tom wanted, and the book it's a blue cover and it's got a tissue box on it.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is why it caught me, because it said maybe you should talk to someone with a tissue box, and I was like, I think mostly I wanted to know if it was fiction or nonfiction.
Yeah. I
think when I clicked on it, I thought it was like a fiction book, so it was like somebody talking through issues, but it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I mean, I haven't read too much nonfiction. I know I was in a kind of a kick for a while previously, but I'm pretty much sticking to the fiction aspect for a little while, I think. And what else have you been reading, Miss Kay?
Well, another nonfiction one I actually ordered and I'm going to read. Okay. I just haven't read it yet, but I'm going to. It's called The Plague Year, and it's about COVID.
Okay.
And it's written by a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer, Lawrence Wright, and I think it's interesting because we've lived this. This is one of those things we've actually gone through, so it'll be interesting to compare what he writes about to our own experiences.
Yeah.
So I think that one will be good. I'm looking forward to reading that one.
Good. I read a book called Reminders of Him. Okay. This is by Colleen Hoover. Okay. She's pretty prolific. Right now she did Verity. And she's sort of, I think, kind of similar to James Patterson, where she seems to be churning these out, and every time I turn around, it's like there's a new giveaway for a new Colleen Hoover book coming out. But majority of her books are all available on Kindle Unlimited. So you don't need. So Reminders of Him it's about the main character. She's been in prison because she caused a car accident and her boyfriend died. And she didn't contest it or anything. And when she was in prison, she found out she was pregnant with his child. And so after the baby was born, his parents got the baby. And she didn't have any contact and hasn't, obviously. And so so the book follows her getting out of prison. And she comes to this small town wanting to meet her daughter. And winds up meeting up with his best friend, who she'd never met before. And so it's them kind of working through finding out what they believe happened that night, what actually happened, and kind of the healing that comes from, because he was the guy that died was like the only child, golden boy in town that everybody loved, and
of course,
all that. So, I mean, she's pretty, I like Colleen Hoover. Well, I mean, Verity gives you trauma for the rest of your life every time you think about it. But I mean, it's that's the book that's where, Verity is the one where there was an author that was writing books, and was in an accident and is like a vegetable. And so they bring in this ghostwriter to take over and finish her books. and she finds this story, and she can't tell if it's fiction or if this is truth. And also, the kids that are living in the house seem to talk about talking to their mom and their mom talking to him. So you don't really know what's going on. And at the end, and with Verity at the end of it, you get kind of stop and you still don't 100% know what's reality and what was fake and who was right and who was wrong. So
Ooh,
that's why
I don't know
it's
that
kind
I
of
like that.
I mean, it's one of the, and for me, I will say that if you're a person that are very sensitive to like child abuse.
No, I'm not going to read that.
Like that kind of like trigger with like bad things happening to kids or anything like that. Just don't read it, because I think I read the book, like I think Alex was like 5 or 6 months old, and I was just like, I should not be reading this right now. I have a baby. I should not be reading this.
Yes.
But so I mean, that's what people like. You have two steps of people with that book. It's either people thought it was an amazing book, and other people are like, I am so traumatized by this book. I am never going to be able to read anything by Colleen Hoover again. But yeah. So, but Reminders of Him I did like, but it did go a little towards the end. It was sort of like we could have wrapped this up about
2 chapters ago, 5
a
chapters
couple
ago.
chapters ago. We could have done all the healing a few pages earlier. So
I hear you.
Yep. What else have you been reading?
I'm a huge fan of Anne Rice, and
Rest in peace.
What?
Rest in peace, Anne Rice.
And as soon as I can find them. Well, she wrote 3 books, and the first one's called Ramsey the Dead, or the Damned, and then there's The Reign of Ossie, and there's a third one. And so
are these part of the Interview with the Vampire series?
No, they're separate standalones.
Okay.
She did the first book like 20 years ago, and then it sort of stopped, and she never did anything with it. And it's a great book, especially if you have an interest in ancient Egypt, because the protagonist Ramses is immortal. And he drank an elixir that keeps him alive, and he gets hooked up with Cleopatra at one point, and things get complicated.
As they seem to, yes.
Yes, and so it's good. It's about Victorian England and all that. And then the second one came out like a year ago or 2 years ago, and then the third one is written with Anne Rice and her son.
Okay.
And I don't remember reading the second one, and I haven't read the third one yet, so I'm starting over and just going to read the whole series. And but Anne Rice died not long ago. And I was sad because she wrote a lot of interesting books. And that Interview with the Vampire, isn't that the Tom Cruise movie with Brad Pitt?
It's the Brad Pitt movie with Tom Cruise, yes.
Yes.
I don't like Tom Cruise. I have a lot of issues with
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. I mean, Mission Impossible, yes, that one I do like, but I just,
He did some really movies that I just hate.
Yeah, well, and Anne Rice actually didn't like him as the vampire Lestat either. She didn't watch the movie forever. I think it was only a couple of years ago that she finally was just like, I guess he's okay. But yeah, she didn't like it either.
Well, I wasn't that nuts about it either. A lot of blood in that movie.
A lot of blood in the book.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of blood, period.
Yes. Well, it's vampires, so that just tends to happen.
Yeah, it goes with the territory.
Yeah.
So what else are you reading?
Well, I fall down the big, deep, dark hole of TikTok at least once a day, especially if I'm sitting, putting a child to sleep or whatever. And there is a very big book community on TikTok suggesting books. And so I had seen, a lot of people have been talking about this series. I think there's like 5 or 6 books called the Zodiac Academy.
Yeah,
so
I've seen those. They're free on
I know they
Kindle
are.
Unlimited.
I know they are. The first one is called The Awakening, and it's by Carolyn Peckman, and I think it's co-authored, but I don't remember who the other author is. And it follows a set of twins who find out that they are fae or fairy, whatever you want to use the right word with. I'm sure I'm breaking some rule of fantasy literature out there. But find out that they are the heirs to this throne. And so they have to be able, and they have powers, of course, because it's young adult fantasy right now, and everybody's got all these powers running around. But so they have to go to this school to learn to control it if they want to take over the throne and get this birthright and stuff. And so it's interesting for me because, yes, they're at a school, but everybody at this school is 18 and over. So it's sort of more like a college. Or I guess, but everything is based on, like your astrology sign. So like they're Gemini. So every morning when they get up with all their school announcements, they get their daily horoscope. That's supposed to tell them how the day is going to go. But it was interesting because they all are different groups, and actually among them, like there's some that can turn into animals. There are some that are vampires. I mean, it's really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It sort of stopped really suddenly, so I'm interested to see where the next one picks up. I mean, people are raving about them. I'm not 100% sure it's
so
quite
how
up
does it
to hype.
compare to Harry Potter?
These don't reside in the same genres at all. Like Harry Potter would be over here, and this is like it's much more grown up, very
Darker?
much more grown up sibling that they should not hang out together probably. So yes, it is. I would say at least 17, if not 18 and up, should read these books, and not younger for some parts. So, which is how it normally is with young adult fiction at this point. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have the second one downloaded on my Kindle, but then all of my books from the library showed up at the same time again, so they got pushed back.
So how do you like your Kindle Unlimited membership?
I do like it. Yeah, I do. The list is very long, but I do like that a lot of it seems to be a pretty big variety. So I was really glad that like the Colleen Hoover book was on there because I was in line for that at the library, and it was going to be like at least 3-4 months before I got it.
Oh, sure.
Which some books I don't mind waiting that long, but there's some where you're like, I think the waiting time is going to be longer than it's going to take me to read the book.
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing that's great about Kindle Unlimited, and for people who may not be familiar with it, is it's in a ebook format through Amazon, and you pay $9.98 a month, I think.
I think so, something like that.
And there's all different deals out there too, but you can have up to 10 books at all times, and when I originally started with Amazon Unlimited a few years ago, there was a lot of self-published stuff on it. And now it's big-time authors. Nora Roberts is on it, and Kent Kruger, and different people. And so I think it's worth it because if you were to buy one book by any of those people, it'd be at least $10. Yeah.
Well, I remember when like Barnes & Noble came out with the first Nook, and they had like the free books on there, and some of those were kind of scary. You could see why people were paying Barnes & Noble to put their book on there. But I suppose you're like, it's a free book. I really can't complain.
Well, yeah, you could.
You can, I suppose.
But I do have to say, I have discovered a whole group of authors that I never would have been introduced to had I not had Kindle Unlimited, and ones that I've really liked, that I've read additional books by them.
Yeah, well, and I've found that with, again, TikTok, because a lot of authors make videos talking about, they do like a little teaser where they just like say like a scene from their book, or they'll put up the word and then they'll put down underneath what the title is or where you can get it. And it's like, well, this to be read list just got a whole lot longer. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of fun with it. I mean, it'll make it easier when we're traveling at the end of this month to take the Kindle instead of
a suitcase of books.
Well, I probably will still take a small suitcase of books, let's be honest. But I had to, earlier in February, the newest, Sarah J. Maas had a new series she started called Crescent City, and the second book came out in that. And I had a feeling, like the first book was like maybe the size of this one, so it's not too big. The second book in the series is like this.
Wow.
I tried to take a video of it to show my friend, and I went to tip it like this, and it just all fell on. I almost dropped it on top of Archie because I couldn't get it tipped right. And I think it's like 900 pages. And Tom looked at me and he goes, "Please don't pack that in the checked bag because we will go over 60 pounds so fast if just that book goes in there."
Leave it home. Leave it home.
Yes, and that's what he had to tell me too. He's like, it's great to pack books and take them, but there are bookstores where we're going. And it's like, well, I know there are, but it's also going to be more expensive probably than just taking what I have.
Probably not, because the difference in paying the overage on the luggage.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so.
Hey, if someone told me there are bookstores there, I would say, yes, there are, and we're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he does not. He will not send me into a bookstore on my own if he can handle it. He's always trying to keep track of where I am in a bookstore. Like sometimes he's threatened to like tie a balloon to my wrist so he can track me through the store and know where I am. What else have you been reading?
Hang on one sec.
Yes.
Let me just see what else. There's a group of books by an author. The protagonist is a police inspector, and his name's Skelgill.
Okay.
Skelgill. He's Scottish, and he's sort of a loner, and he has two staff people work under him, inspectors, and I think there's maybe 18 books in the series. I discovered it through Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
And they're really good. The author spends a lot of time in his head. And he's sort of, he's uncomfortable in social situations, and women find him attractive, of course. And he's always trying to figure things out because it's never how it appears. Mm-hmm. And so and I'm trying to figure out if he's got a thing going with one of the people he works with, but I don't think he does, but I think he's interested.
Okay.
And I think she's interested. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should just read the last one and then I'd know. But I sort of cherry pick, the ones that I think sound interesting. And then when I'm done with those, I can go back and read some more.
Oh, see, I have to read everything in order. I can't jump around.
Well, sometimes I do that because it's important because the characters change and grow. Mm-hmm. These don't seem to be. These are billed as standalones.
Not much changing and growing.
No, not much changing and growing. He does a lot of fishing. He's into fishing. So he's always talking about the different lures and the different flies, and his car is full of like fishing stuff, and he has to like move it around to do things and stuff. So, but those are good. And when you were talking about vampires before, I'm actually reading a sample, and that's one of the great things about Kindle is you can download samples to see if it's interesting. Sherlock Holmes and Count Dracula. How's that one?
Sounds like Pride and Prejudice and zombies.
Yeah, that was good. I read that. And this one starts out where one of the Scotland Yard guys finds a box with a finger in it, a freshly cut off finger. And then, of course, Holmes has to do all these tests on it, and he just can't figure it out. And they end up in some dilapidated little house that's spooky, and they've got silver bullets. And so I'm not sure where it goes from here, but it'll be interesting to see how Sherlock Holmes deals with Count Dracula. I might have to actually buy it. To see how it ends up. But I don't know. It's got to, I don't know. I might have to, we'll see.
Well, you'll have to let us know on a future episode what you decided to do. I'm sure everybody will want to know.
Yes. Another book series that I've read, and I kind of stopped reading it because there was a lull between book, but it's the Sebastian St. Cyr mystery series. Takes place in it's either the late 1700s or the 1800s in France and England, and he's, of course, they're always wealthy, and he's sort of becomes an investigator, and he marries a woman whose father is the most powerful man beside the king. And her father dislikes him a lot, and he dislikes the father a lot.
Okay.
But yet they often find themselves on the same side because of the situation. So they're good, but the last one that just came out, number 17, is When Blood Lies.
Okay.
And these are ones you almost have to read in order because his mother disappeared at some point. And so she comes through all these different books.
Have you figured out where she disappeared during the books? Or
Yeah, oh yeah, you know she's
Okay.
like, because he's talking
I thought
about
it was like you read some of the books out of order and all of a
No,
sudden
no,
it's like,
these
oh,
I
mom's gone, now she's back.
No, these I read in order
Okay.
because, because it's interesting because he's in love with his actress, and then she dumps him and marries someone else, and then he marries this woman, but they're good, and so now I'm probably going to have to read the 17
Okay.
to find out what happened to his mom.
Well, and on that note, we are at our end of our time for this episode, so we will see you next time. And if you have any questions, reach out either on Facebook or through our email, offtheshelfbooktalk@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.